shed a million tears. You are on my lonely mind. I'm gonna keep drinking until I'm petrified, and then maybe these tears will leave my eyes. There's a tear in my beer, 'cause I'm crying for you, dear. You are on my lonely mind.
Last night I walked the floor, and the night before, you were on my lonely mind. It seems my life is through, and I'm so doggone blue. You are on my lonely mind. I'm gonna keep drinking till I can't move a toe, and then maybe my heart won't hurt me so. There's a tear in my beer, 'cause I'm crying for you, dear. You are on my lonely mind. Lord, I've tried and I've tried, but my tears I can't hide. You are on my lonely mind. All these blues that I've found have really got me down. You are on my lonely mind. I'm gonna keep drinking till I can't even think. 'Cause in the last week I ain't slept a wink. There's a tear in my beer, 'cause I'm crying for you, dear. You are on my lonely mind.
She called me late last night, say she loved me so. Didn't matter anymore. I say she never cared and that she never will. Do it all again, I guess I'll have to wait until then. If I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. If you're drinking, well, you know that you're
Okay, thanks everybody for joining our February meeting and welcome. So we've got some fun stuff to talk about tonight, and we'll get started here. We'll talk about some of the events that are coming up, but please tell me what you're drinking. Type it in the chat. We want to know what you got going tonight. Just a reminder, if you have any questions while we're going, go ahead and type that in the chat and let us know. We'll field those as we go through the slides, and just feel free to post any comments in there, and we'll address those as we take a break. Yeah, so let's talk about events. This is going to be pretty interesting this year. I'm pretty excited about what we got going. There's still some uncertainty, so we don't know for sure whether we're going to be in person or virtual. We'll make sure and let everybody know. But right now, March Happy Hour is planned for the Red Lion, and we are going to plan for the March monthly meeting to be in person. As cases drop off, that is going to be pretty close because right now the church policy is that if the county is in the red, we can't have in-person meetings. So it needs to move back to the yellow, and that's, I think, going to be pretty close if we look at the current cases and the rate they're dropping off. So one thing I should say about the Hoppy Hour at Red Lion, talked to Chris this week, and he's going to put on a special keg for us when we go. So we don't know what that's going to be yet, but we will we'll let everybody know, and it'll be a good time. Let's see. So Craft Brewers Expo. So that is Saturday, March 12th. I can almost guarantee you, and it'll be, we don't know yet, but I bet there will be at least one beer there that you all are really going to want to try. And then, of course, Parkville is April 30th. It's a lot of fun. I've got a special slide on that, so I won't talk about that yet. So Mayfest. So we had some scheduling issues with Pints for Pets. So Pints for Pets, our host this year, really the only date they had is May 7th. Unfortunately, that was Mayfest, which normally coincides with National Homebrew Big Brew Day. So we'll probably need to have a conversation about how we want to go, what direction we want to go with that. But I'm a big fan of bringing Pints for Pets back. If we don't have it happen on the 7th, I'm not sure when we'll be able to get it in. So we were planning to do the barrel brew instead of Mayfest. So we can talk about a combined event, Pints for Pets, Mayfest, or we can move Mayfest. Definitely want to hear what everybody's thoughts are. We'll post on the forums. And everybody can, let us know what their thoughts are. So Brewfest 26 locked in at September 24th, and of course the holiday party on December 3rd. Okay, so I think we've got Parkville coming up next. Yeah, so sign up for Parkville is live. It's posted on the forums. I think we have 3 or 4 slots left for that. And I just last night got an email from Warren that runs the event, and they are definitely locked in. And but there's a chance if we get a few more people than the 12 tickets that we have available, it's possible we could get 2 tents and get some more tickets. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It's a really fun event. My second favorite beer festival of the year, followed by Brewfest, of course. So if you haven't been before, brew up a batch and get your name in there and donate, and you get a free ticket. So okay, so our next slide is Mayfest maybe. Barrel Project. I am going to let Josh talk about this a little bit, and I'll let him take over.
Yeah, so whether we end up doing it with Mayfest or if we pick a later date, this is something that I've been real excited to get moving again. The club had a barrel project that was, I think, pretty successful early on, or I don't know how many years ago that was. I know Andy was a big part of that. And so I've wanted to get this going for some time. So here we are. We're gonna give this a go. A lot of logistics to kind of still figure out on how everything's going to work. But with Dan's presentation last month and the opportunity to possibly get barrels, either through him or through Jay Reiger or wherever, things are looking good. But the original plan was to brew for the barrel during Mayfest. We can still do that if we want to do it early morning, before Pints for Pets, if those both happen the same day, or we can, we can figure out a different date. We will need volunteers to brew. Depending on the size of barrel we get, if we get a 55-gallon barrel, we need, maybe 60 gallons, 65 gallons, just for in case one of the batches doesn't turn out properly or something like that. We need to prepare to be able to fill that barrel full. So we're going to need up to 10 members, depending on your brewing capacity. or the interest that we have in order to accomplish that. And then maybe 2 alternate brewers as well. I've created a sign up form. I have not published that yet, but I will after the meeting tonight. I'll get that posted to Facebook and the forum. So if you're interested in brewing for the barrel, please sign up and give us your information, and we'll reach out and make sure. You know, we will be limited to 10 members. So if there are more than 10 members that are interested, what I plan to do is kind of make you alternates or backups. And then also those individuals would be first on the list for the next barrel that we fill up. So as for style, we're also taking nominations for what style to do. One of the styles that was thrown out is a wheat wine. But, you know, other good styles would be, you know, stouts, barley wines, anything like that. So yeah, feel free to get on the forum thread that we have and shout out what style you are a fan of. I've got a lot more work to do as far as nailing out dates and logistics and record tracking.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep rolling then. So 2022 collaborations. This is a kind of an initiative that I've been working on since late last year. I've been pestering some of our local brewers to give us a little bit of time for a collaboration. I think this is a fantastic way to engage members, get our name out there, have some fun, reward folks for their contributions to the club. And you know, this can be something that people can join, and they don't necessarily have to win a competition. You know, they can just basically participate in the club. You know, maybe whether it's volunteering for things or whatever. We just want to recognize that, and I think this is a great way to do it. And it's also you know, events that can be done in small groups. And then we can all go to the brewery and drink the beers that our club made. So I think it's going to be really fun. I've got these confirmed. So Free State will be February 24th. I'll talk about that one in a little bit more detail here in a second. Yankee Tank is March 24th, and Irvine Winery. Technically, both of these are first ever. So first ever Yankee Tank collaboration, as far as I know, and first ever winery collaboration for the club. Frank can fact check that later, but as far as I know, that's the first winery collaboration that we've had.
Yeah, yeah, winery, and then I've guest brewed at Yankee Tank, but that was a Veterans Day project, so I don't know if that counts for Brewers Guild participation.
Ah, okay. Yeah, Angelo had said that he did one for a competition, but then I think somebody else from a different club won. So, and then of course service, we do have a verbal commitment from them. We don't have dates or number of slots. Same with Born Spirit Co. I talked to Sam this week. He's been really busy, but I finally did get stopped in the brewery and talked to him, and he's very interested. And it sounds like that one could be a lot of fun. He probably more than anyone else that we talked to was, you know, maybe aside from Angelo, was willing to just kind of give us a pretty wide lane to brew whatever we wanted. So that's pretty exciting. And this is not the end of the list. I still have more in the works. I've got some other recommendations. If anybody has a brewery that you think that we should brew at, let me know. I will hit them up, and there's a high likelihood we can put something together. So yeah, I'm really excited for this, and I can't wait to see what everybody brews. So, and I think our next slide is specifically about Free State, and we just kind of got some of the final details just today. So Free State's doing, so we'll get 3 slots for this, and we nominated Josh, Ryan, and Frank for this first one. I'm not going to talk about all the things that these guys have contributed, but just for example, for our last club tasting, Josh and Ryan bottled almost 100 beers for everyone. That was fantastic. And of course, Frank does the magic of which we are watching right now, not to mention taking care of all of our jockey boxes and redoing lines and cleaning it for Brewfest so that we can have nice clean beer. Probably the most interesting thing about this particular collaboration, depending on what style they pick, if it's something that matures fast enough. So IPA was a bunch of different IPAs were kind of thrown out there as options. Then it will be on tap for the Kansas Craft Beer Expo. And that was actually something that that Jeff was pretty adamant about. He thought that would be cool. And that was probably his first vision for this. So that could be really exciting. And last I checked, it was a couple of days ago, there are still tickets available for that, as far as I can tell. Usually that thing sells out in, a few days, but the Craft Beer Expo is definitely a good one. It looks like Ryan's got tickets for the first session. I'll be at the second session. I don't know if anybody else has tickets, but we will definitely represent. I'm confident of that. Okay, Frank, hit me on the next slide. All right, so I'm going to kick it over to Ryan for this one. Ryan, it is all yours, my friend.
All right, good evening, everybody. First round here is your new treasure for 2022. We currently have 35 paid members, so that's a pretty good increase over our previous update, which I believe had 7. So we're moving in the right direction. There is, oh, hold on one sec, Frank. There is info. You can do cash, check, or the classic PayPal. If you do PayPal, as always, don't forget to send to a friend, and go ahead and roll that next slide, Frank. If you're watching on your TV or computer, you can read this QR code right now and send in payment, just as easy as snapping the code and sending in your 25 bucks. So this is your friendly reminder to pay your dues. We'll hold for just one. Okay, there we go. We're back over here. All right. First time doing charts, so you'll have to excuse that somehow I ended up with blue shaded for expense too. Rookie move. Very few expenses this month, about $61 of outfall, well, 62 closer to. You can see there, bills and Brewfest. However, membership, people are paying them. Like I said, we got 35 paid memberships, and that has brought us in almost $600. Here's our net total chart. If you see that purple bar at the far left is January. We are ahead of any of the last 3 Januaries, so off to a roaring start. And it's the beginning of the year, so we'll fill this chart out as we go. Here's our account balances. This is where we're sitting. So we're sitting pretty good. I think that's my last slide, so I'll turn it over to our librarian.
She's not back.
If they made it back, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Nobody-
think she made it.
So I came
No,
back.
she didn't make it back. I tried to invite her. She's restarting her computer. So yeah, I guess.
I have a treasury question. Can you hear me?
I will
Yeah.
attempt to answer it. I just took over, so if I can't, Jake will.
Okay, I need to go to Praxair and buy some gas. Do we still need a membership card? If we do?
Yes, you
can I
do.
get one?
Yes, you do. Yep. So you got a couple. Well, I'll tell you what. Ryan can answer that question.
I paid my
Membership cards.
dues.
I'm not sure. Can I? I'm trying to think of where we are with
Well,
printing them or what's.
So
the
first of
status.
all, your membership card doesn't expire till the end of February. So you have till the end of the month
Okay,
for your card to expire. And Praxair has gotten better about checking for cards because of that.
They're very good now. Yeah.
oh, I know, they're too good.
Yeah.
But your card should
Um,
have an expiration date of 28 February 2022.
Okay,
Right. So John, actually, I think I did see that you paid some dues.
right.
Technically, I don't think that you really need to pay dues as the quartermaster.
I
We
don't care.
usually
For the
okay,
good of
fair
the
enough.
club.
But Ryan, you do have, I have all the membership cards printed. And so you've got a folder with all those printed cards.
That's right.
I also sent you the electronic copy that Josh made for us. What I've been doing for people is if they, we might not see them and they want their cards, I just do like a screenshot of the card and email them just their card. That works for Praxair. They have no problem. And honestly, Praxair just records that member number. And I was in there the other day and showed them the new cards. So if they're savvy about, checking for a new card, they might, but they also might not. So something to think about. So I'm sure Ryan can hook you up there and take care of that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Cool. Lynette, I can cover this one. So this was actually my recommendation for us to pick up a couple copies of John Palmer's recent edition of How to Brew. So this is the 4th edition. We at one time had some earlier editions. I think they have all since walked off. I could not find one the last time I was looking through there. I think these are really great books to have, especially for new members to check out. And so we went ahead and got 2 copies on the way, and those will get added to the library next month. Fingers crossed we're in person. So yeah, any of our new members can check those out. It's a solid book with some, kind of focuses a little bit more on the technical side. Whereas the Complete Joy of Home Brewing is a little bit broader and has maybe not as much as a focus on the scientific side. So, but it's a good book regardless. Okay, what's next?
Oh, really quick. And
Mhm.
Tara and I will do a physical inventory as soon as possible with updated lists for people to know what's there.
Cool. Yeah, and if anybody wants to help out with that, I think we will. We might post something because we'll all probably need to head out to the church and small group and mask up. They will allow that.
Yeah, I managed to fit it all in my car last time, but now I have more stuff in my car. So another car would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we can do it at the church. I think would probably be a good idea. That way, we're not carting it around. Okay, so fresh on the forum. A lot of traffic on the forums lately. Mostly me. I think Josh had posted some stuff on there recently that I didn't get in this list. A couple of things that I want to point out is that the club collaborations I've posted on there some details, and I will update that post periodically as we finalize things. If there's new breweries, if you're interested in getting in, if there's a slot available, please let me know. I was kind of talking about the Irvine Winery one, when we stopped earlier, and that one is there's a lot of spots open on that. So we really only have about 6 folks, I think, that are confirmed, 5 or 6, and there's another 4 or 5 spots open. We are just going to take volunteers. So anybody that wants to get in on that is welcome. We do not necessarily know that we're making wine. Ed Jr. makes some pretty good mead as well. He had a couple of hydromels at Brewfest last year that were excellent. So it'll be exciting to see what the group gets together, decides what to make. Like I mentioned on the proximity malt donation, that went really well. We got rid of all of it. I still have some grain left. And then, of course, the 2022 seminar topics, which I got another recommendation or another request for doing a seminar on what we could call the logical progression of upgrades in home brewing. So, if I'm an extract brewer, what's the first thing I upgrade? I don't know. That might be a good panel discussion. So something for us to think about. And then finally, COVID policy. We basically just put in place, some policy that essentially says that we are just going to follow what the county, the CDC, and the church, rules are. And there's some details in there if you want to see that. And I think that is it for the main meeting. Are we on to the seminar now? I think so. Josh, you want to kick us off?
Yes, sorry about that. So yeah, this month we are going to highlight some member brewing rigs. I reached out on Facebook and the forums and asked you guys to send some pictures and talk a little bit about your setup. And we have a good range of different brewing setups. I think it's going to be a really good presentation. So with that, I'll pass it on to Greg to talk about his.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You're fine.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry. Yep.
okay. So about 6 months into COVID, I got really bored. Used to have like all of my gear stored downstairs in the basement in the storage area, and I'd bring up what I needed kind of one at a time and sanitize it. Use the stove top to brew on, or if it was nice outside, I had a burner and would do it out on the patio. So I decided I had some room at the front of my garage where there's kind of a cut in there where I could kind of put everything together and have everything in one place and do everything in one place. So I put in the cabinets and the countertop and everything there. You can see on the right, I've got a little 5 cubic foot freezer that I have an Inkbird hooked up to that I can use for kind of a fermentation chamber. On the left, I got a refrigerator, which I have to share with my wife, but do have hops and yeast and stuff in there. And then I have the utility sink on the far left there where I can clean up stuff and also use to chill my wort and stuff in as well. So I had purchased a Anvil foundry here within the last year. Really like it a lot. It's really simplified things a little bit and sped things up. Actually had a 240 outlet there as well, where I can get things going pretty fast. So I've used that. I really like it a lot. Over on the left there towards the top, you can see I've got a mill and a couple of scales, the one for my grain, and I got the little pocket one kind of that I use for hops measurement and that kind of stuff. Well, inside of the fridge there, where I've actually got a couple of kegs that were cooling on that particular picture, along with some grains and stuff that you can see in there as well. So really it's just, for me, it's a really nice setup where I can go out there and I can pretty much do everything from beginning to end. Don't have to mess up the kitchen and get my wife mad and all of those things. And I don't know, in one of the pictures you can see too, I actually, the house that we had bought actually had like a heating unit out there, which I moved over the top of my setup there. So even if it's really, really cold outside, I can, pretty much heat it to where I want it to work in the winter in the garage as well. So, beyond that, I got a few tools there on the counter. I think temperature control is really, really big when you're talking about making a good beer, particularly on the fermentation side. So, using the Inkbird and a little wrap heater that I've got there as well, I can really control that really tightly. And, obviously the electric brewer does a pretty good job of maintaining a constant temp on the mash as well. The other tools that are I think are really important, that work well for me are the refractometer that I'm sitting there on the countertop as well to get that original gravity number, kind of dialed in where I want. And then a final hydrometer, which really just kind of measures between 1 and 1.02 for the most part. It really gives you a very accurate reading, when you're looking for that kind of final gravity number and where you're at. So that's pretty much what I got. Any questions?
I had one question on the anvil. Is that like a 110 volt unit, or does it run on like 220?
Yeah, it runs on both. And basically it has a switch on the back. You can switch it, the voltage on there from one to the other. And I actually had to replace the cord on it because it was set up for a 120.
Cool. Does it get to boil pretty fast once you converted it?
Yeah, it makes it a lot quicker. It probably cut, the time to get the strike water up to temp and the boil probably in half or more. And you get a really nice rapid boil too, which was kind of struggling at 120 to get a very brisk boil.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot. We'll move on to Clint and let him talk a little bit about his setup and I believe his previous setup.
He's moving rooms. So the setup on the left is the previous setup, which was shared with Mr. Jensen. And I have a cool story about that setup when Clint's done.
Yep, the one on the left is what I brewed with Jeff 20 times a year for, I don't know, 5-7 years. But then had a kid, spent more time at home, and the Grainfather came out in 2016, and I was one of the first people to buy one. And a year later, the Grainfather Connect controller came out, and so which allowed for Bluetooth and more increased control via the internal PID instead of just an on-off temperature sensor. So go ahead and hit the next one. And I assume we've all seen the Grainfathers, but they're like the Anvil and all the other brew in a bag, semi-clone kind of things. But I had here on the left, I have a cooler with an Inkbird that I can make my heat up my sparge water. I'd also preheated it. I could preheat it in the kettle and put it in the cooler while I then heated up the mash water. But you can see there's an inner sleeve here which has a false bottom, and then this drain pipe in the middle. So you put your grain in and mash in, and then it has the pump, so it recirculates while that happens. And then when that's done, you raise it up and sparge through it. I've also had good luck doing a no sparge and just having all the extra water in the mash, and then just lifting up the thing, and it has a strainer plate at the top and the bottom, and so all the water goes out. And so go to the next one. And then, yeah, and of course I don't have a picture of the strainer plate up, but you can see these on the one on the left, you see this split ring, which holds the inner thing in place when you pull it up. So then you can turn it and it holds there while it drains, and then you can pump it up to a boil. And like Greg mentioned, 110, it's a lot of waiting. And then it comes with a counterflow chiller. So just a matter of hooking that up to the same recirculation pump, and then turning off the pump and turning on the water and chilling it back down. And then of course, because there's gadgets to be had for it, I had to buy one of them. It's
For
pretty
your essential oils,
right for my
for your
essential
pure
oils
water.
and my fuel for my lawnmower.
I love it.
And a few of the things that I noted that, you know, that the cost per brew is really low on electricity. I've run my what's up meter on it, and I don't remember what the number is, but when it's less than 50 cents worth of electricity to do an entire brew day. Probably somewhere more closer to 35 cents, but so compare that to the price of propane. You know, if you were to brew, you know, how many brews do you get out of a 20-pound tank of a $20 tank of propane? You make up that pretty quick. Cheaper than a hot
I
tub.
I wouldn't mind being a fly on the wall when you brew again, because I have a grandfather as well and have not been terribly happy with the efficiency performance of it, but I still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the best I don't think I've gotten over 75%, which once I gave up on trying to get high efficiencies because I really, care about that. And basically when I start, if you don't sparge and you expect 65%, or then, you're pretty happy with 65, 63%. So, yeah, and it kind of like, gee, it has Bluetooth. How handy. Oh, wait, no, it's not. It's only, the range is only like, well, one wall in my house.
Low power Bluetooth. Yeah.
So, why they didn't put in a Wi-Fi chip instead that you could, connect to your, but anyway, and now they of course have, like everybody has, a 220 version, which, yeah, being able to do all the heat up times, a brew day in 4 hours, because it takes an hour to heat up your mash water and another hour to get from mash out to boil, and then an hour boil. And, it's the times add up, it's like the waiting times are significant. So if you have the option to go with a 220, I'd highly recommend it. I realize that not everybody can just wire up a 220 plug, and I'd have to unplug my car to use my 220 plug, but since I'm not driving anywhere, that's fine. Yes, it does allow for sparging. When you when that inner basket where the grain is, you lift it up and it locks in place, and then you can pump the water. That's what was in the brown or in the gray cooler. Pump that water in above the grain bed, and then it and sparges. So it's, yep, there's a picture of the that thing. Yep.
Hey, Clint.
Yep.
Is it a double walled unit?
It is not.
No.
So I bought the jacket that goes with it, and that helps a lot. But
I was going to say, I've got a mash and brew, which is the cheaper version or competition to that. And I went out and bought myself like wetsuit material and made a jacket for mine. And that I noticed it significantly helped my retain heat and heat up faster. So,
yep. I've used it most of the time. I haven't lately, and I don't want to when the special cap's on. There you go. Yep. Somebody's put quick connects on theirs. Fancy. I've bought quick
sight
connects.
glass.
Ooh,
We put a
and
sight glass in the return of the pump. Yeah.
The thing I want to do is put a valve on the bottom before the pump, so you can put a 3-way valve down there so you can input your sparge through that and have it pumped up into the thing so you don't have to lift it above your head. But there's lots of things I would do if I were to do it again. But anyway, it's a good starter electric rig, and for the under $1,000 to have everything you need to start brewing inside. It's a pretty decent way to start. So there you go.
All right. If there's no other questions on that, Ryan is up next.
All right, I'm gonna do a quick throwback though to my original brew setup here before I go into the tech stuff, just so we all don't overly show off cool brew stuff and drive all the new people away. Go ahead and click to the next one. Here's what I'm brewing on now though. It is an electric kettle ran by a PID controller that automatically does the temperature control for me. You heard about Clint talking about the dialing in the temperature unit. It's basically a scaled up version for this. We built it ourselves. You can see here it's on a rolling rack. We're going to go through the individual parts here, so go ahead and click that next one, Frank. This is the electric guts right here. I'm not sure who has the slides pinned up so you can see up close, but we diagrammed it. We spent months planning this thing out. It was death by committee here between John and I to get our brewery set up. Eventually we built it and it came out just like we planned, but it was a very long committee ordeal. It's an waterproof electrical enclosure. There is both 240 and 120 in here, so it's definitely something you don't open and play with when it's plugged in. And we have had a couple component failures I've had to replace, not sure root cause analysis didn't find anything. So it is a custom brew panel, but it is based roughly around theelectricbrewery.com. Several of us are probably familiar with it. I took their version and their diagrams and stripped out this to the bare minimum for a first build. So theirs has a lot of other bells and whistles and can control other pumps, AB switches, all this other stuff. This is the bare minimum to run a 240 volt element. So, and then next slide, Frank. Somebody's talking about quick connects there at the Grainfather one. We added a bunch of fittings to our vessel, and we did go with the cam locks. You can see in the top left there. Most of the cam lock fittings we did were actually threaded fittings. So we sweated or soldered fittings through the walls of the kegel, and then screwed those cam lock fittings on. So that way, as Frank will show in the next slide here. And I guess speaking of jacketing material, you could see we have this Mylar jacket blanket around the keg to help hold the heat in. And then here you can see our top left picture is us testing it. As you can tell, there is a washcloth wrapped around one of the fittings because it was not watertight during the first test. Good to be testing with water. Because then if you notice in the other picture, I am brewing an Imperial Stout in my apartment carpeted living room. Did not spill anything. By a miracle, that carpet was just as clean after we left as when I started. But if you notice too, we had to figure out a solution for mounting the electrical panel. On the test picture there, I have it just laying on the cart. By the time we got it to the next one, I had mounted it to a board and zip tied it. Eventually we upgraded the metal cart to actually have a bolt-on place for the panel. So we're not so rudimentary now. Do I have another picture, Frank, or is that my last slide? Oh, I thought I had that one hidden, but here's we can look at it. It's my Keyser build. I think we talked about Keyser's another one, so we can roll back to the other one, the previous slide, Frank. Anybody have any questions about what we did or our crazy chaos here? As you can see, I mash separately in a separate vessel, so we heat our strike water in the brew kettle, transfer it into our mash tun, just like it basically replaces a propane burner. So eventually I'd like to upgrade to a RIM system, but for now, it's basically an electric version of a classic propane burner setup. Any questions, comments? I like
I called you brave on in the comments for that Imperial Stout, but I'm not sure if it was if it's brave or idiotic or what, man.
It can be
It's
a little.
crazy.
It can be a little column A, column B.
Man, that took some kahunas.
You
Yeah.
must not be married.
Well, that was the apartment I was renting. Now it lives in my garage now that I have a house.
Have you ever metered your electric usage?
I have not yet. I mean, I can tell you the element at full power will draw 5,500 watts, but it runs about 40% or less to actually run a full 10-gallon boil once it's actually at temp.
My controller is similar to that. I don't know what your heating element is compared to mine. I know when I'm running my heating element on 100%, I'm pulling anywhere between like 18 to 20 amps from the breaker or whatever. So I'm assuming yours is probably similar.
Yeah, at peak, mine can only pull, I think, 23 amps down. So pretty damn similar. And I actually have a second element, 4,500 watt. I can sub out if I'm going somewhere else with different conditions, different outlets or different electrical cords. Eventually, I'm going to build a second vessel and do an actual proper, like I said, a RIMS or HERMS or something.
Cool. Thanks a lot. We will move on to Lee.
All right, I'm kind of like the opposite of everyone else. I have about the lowest tech, easy for anyone to do system. So I brewed with other people for the first couple years I was brewing, so I had time to try out different equipment and see what I liked. And I was going for simple and not a lot of equipment because I have an 800 square foot house. I don't have a basement. I don't have a garage. Similar to like living in an apartment, I just don't have a space that I can have dedicated to brew and have 3 kettles and an electric setup. So I just have a 10-gallon pot and I do brew in a bag. I use paint bags that I buy at the hardware store. And then I use an induction burner because don't trust myself around a propane burner. I'd probably light my hair on fire or something. So induction burner. I have buckets that I use for my like sparge and just heat up some more water on the stovetop. You can see my very fancy auto siphon in the middle picture, how I transfer to my fermentation unit. I have no fermentation temperature control either because I don't have space for another refrigerator. I already have my little kegerator, that's enough. So I just kind of brew based on the weather and pick the style of beer based on, what temperature my house is and what temperature the yeast likes. So summertime, we do a lot of Saisons. Wintertime, I can get away with doing an IPA or a stout or something. Definitely don't lager anything. And then also, I'm trying to think, John, he asked, how long does it take to get the boil started on that type of thing? I feel like it's usually about 30 minutes to get up to mash temperature. And then I use, I forget what Ryan called it. I don't know, the like aluminum thing. Yeah, it's 220 volt is what I have. And I use the aluminum thing around it while it is mashing. And then probably takes another 20 minutes to get it up to boil. 15, 20 minutes, I'd say. So not too terribly long. And I save time on my sparge process. And then when I started brewing, I've never done extract brew and I've never bottle fermented. I just went straight and got that fancy kegerator at an auction at one of our holiday parties. And I just keg beer and occasionally bottle from the keg if I have to, but I'm not very good at that and I don't like doing it. So that's about it, unless there are any other questions.
There were auctions at holiday parties?
This was, I don't even know how long ago it was, maybe like 2015 or 2016. I think somebody donated it. So I don't know if there was necessarily like a organized auction or just they had this item, so they did it that way.
Cool. I like the idea.
Two-part question. What's the biggest grain bill you can do? And do you have a hook to hang your bag from while it drains?
I apologize if the chihuahua barks. Dang it. So stop. Grain bill. I don't know if I've done more than like 12, 13, maybe 14 pounds, but yeah, I think the biggest like OG I've done is probably like 1060 or something. I wanted to play around with like doing a double mash or using some extract, but I haven't done that yet. And no, I use 2 smaller bags so that I can hold them up. I bought a levy, but I haven't put it up. So I just
Okay. Do we have any other questions? So I think we'll move on to Jake. Jake, you want to talk a little bit about your setup?
Sure. So like a lot of homebrewers, I started out in like a converted keg, well, actually extract before that on the stovetop, and then, eventually went to a converted keg and did brew in a bag. And all that time I was, thinking about what I really wanted out of a brew system. And so my system is very much centered around flexibility and footprint. So I wanted something that would take up very little square foot space in my garage, and I wanted to be able to do all kinds of things with it. So you can see in the pictures there, the left one, that's at Cotton's. I still learned well, that was the Hang 'em High Hops event at Cotton's last year. And the one on the right is when we were at the Lawrence Brew Supply. And one of the things that I really liked about this setup is that I was able to brew without running water or power. Because it's all gravity, I was able to, just heat up the water with a propane burner and mash in the cooler there, and just run off. And then I hot filled actually I did it 2 ways. I hot filled a keg, which I didn't like as well because it didn't have a high enough volume. And then I did a no chill basically. And then the one on the right, I did bring a little pump, and I filled my fermenter while it was hot and did a no chill for that. Both beers turned out really good. So that was a fun experiment. So all of the kettles and the pumps I have at home. So show the next slide, and you can see what I'm basically brewing on at home. The picture on the left was just a couple of weeks ago. I was brewing a lager. You can see there the stand itself. So a lot of what I have is Blickman equipment, just because there's a lot of reasons. I'll talk about the kettles and the mash tun a little bit, but the quality is just fantastic, and I'm not disappointed with anything that I've got from them. The downside is it is expensive. So you have to get creative. Like I didn't buy their tower. My dad's a welder, so I designed a tower and he put it together. Luckily, he's a craft beer fan, so there was some trading involved. And he also, was happy to help fund some of this for some, periodic deliveries of beer. So the far right are the fermenters that I added just a couple years ago. I will say those are probably not worth the money. They're pretty pricey. I got them on sale, like they were like 30% off, and only then were they really worth it. But I actually do love them. So they're shaped like a corny keg and they have a cone bottom on them. They call them cornicles. Definitely a branding failure there. I think they probably could have done better with the name. But they are fantastic. I do not use them like they were kind of intended to use. They have a seam in the middle where you can ferment in them. When it's done, you drop the yeast and then you flip this thing upside down. You take the cone bottom off and you put a keg bottom on. That's a great idea, but that means you have to have a whole bunch of these if you want to keep brewing. I never, ever do that. What I do is I just, basically use them like conical fermenters, and they're fine like that. And the one thing I like about them is the shape. Again, the footprint is fantastic. They're tall. I do think I get some hydrostatic pressure in there, and I think some beers that are sensitive, or some yeast that are sensitive to that, I do get some slowing of fermentation because of it. But in that middle picture there, you can kind of see the toolbox. I'm actually in my garage now because I wanted to show you some stuff up a little bit closer. But you notice that middle picture there, that is a Blue Jay that joined me for Brew Day that day. That thing was completely tame. Spent 20 minutes in here. I don't know if it's he or she, but it tried to peck my toes. So maybe it was a she. I'm not sure. But anyway, one of the things I wanted to show you is so the false bottom, the Blickman false bottom is, this has got to be the best false bottom on the market. I haven't seen anything else. I haven't tried, but maybe a couple different other ones. But you can see how it's flat. And you can probably look at these online, but there's just really fine slits here, and they're fantastic. You get really good recirc, and I have very little problems with stuck mashes. The other thing, so one of the most recent things that I added, we can kind of look down here. So again, like I had to kind of get creative with stuff because, adding a piece of equipment, like one piece every year, is kind of slow. So I've mounted everything on a toolbox. The last thing I added was this flow meter, which I love. Again, maybe not worth it. Not a Blickman anyway, but I absolutely love having a flow meter. It's fantastic. The system itself is a hybrid, so I can either I can use propane to heat my hot liquor tank, and I use propane for my boil. But this right here is a 220 heating coil that I can recirculate through. And so that's what maintains mash temperature. And then you can see down in here is the PID controller. And you can see in the picture in the slide, there's a laptop there. You can hook it up to a laptop and program mashes so that you can do a step mash or whatever you want to do. I probably don't use this, but maybe a third of the time, because a lot of times it's just one more thing to clean, but it is really nice when I do want to do a step mash. A Hefeweizen is oddly enough not a beer that I like, but it was fun to make. And it is very, it's very helpful for something like that. So yeah, I guess probably, the other things that I did with this setup, I put all of the toolbox together myself, traded beer for the oak on the top here. So that, saved me a little bit of money. I actually got the toolbox used, a lot of stuff for free. So, it's, you kind of have to get creative sometimes if you want to make upgrades. And like I said, this is probably taking me 10 years to put this together. So it's been a long time. Let's see, so John asked if, did I get started wet grinding my malt? I have never done a wet grind before. My mill is over there. I can pull it out, but no, I do all dry grind, and I find a coarse grind is actually really effective. I don't have any problems with the coarse grind. Actually, I get higher efficiency with the slightly coarser grind. Let's see. Recently, I upgraded my fridge, so I got a drip tray, added an extra faucet. That's been nice. What else? Anybody got any questions?
What kind of static again?
What kind of what?
You said sometimes you get some kind of static that the yeast doesn't like.
Oh, hydrostatic pressure in the fermenters. That just means the height of the liquid produces a higher pressure at the bottom. Whereas if you're in a carboy, it's fatter and shorter, so you get less hydrostatic pressure. This is more like professional brewers. Conicals are tall, really tall and skinnier, and they get a similar sort of hydrostatic pressure. And of course, I had to make my own mash paddle. Josh is a big fan of my mash paddle. We'll work out a trade. I'll make you one. In the zombie apocalypse, that I'm grabbing that and maybe like 2 packets of Kvike, and that's it. I'm all set.
Hey Jake, can we get a close up of your motorized mill?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna bring it. So again, I tried starting out. I tried making I tried with a free motor, and I tried a rheostat to slow the motor down, and it didn't work at all. It was terrible. And so I broke down and bought so the motor there comes with a gearbox on it, so it runs slower. And then once again, traded beer for all the wood that this thing is made out of. And the footprint, the shape of this, I don't know if you can kind of see it, but the shape of it is the very minimum that it needs to be in order to hold the bucket and the mill. So can you see that okay?
Yep, looks great.
So just put, the mill actually, or the gearbox actually came with the little switch. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that's it. How was it for time? Guess the time's not quite as important now.
Yeah. Was there any other questions for Jake's setup?
Is your beer engine working?
It is functional, but it's a little high maintenance, so I don't have beer going through it now. Depending on how next month goes, I might have some Irish stout to run through it, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. it does waste a fair amount of beer unless you're just gonna like hook it up, kill a keg, and be done with it. Because if you try to rinse the thing out and clean it and all that, it's just not quite worth it. You know, you end up wasting beer just flushing the water out and stuff. But I do love it. It's lots of fun. It's fun to take like to a festival or something. It was lots of fun to take to Brewfest. That's actually the perfect application for it.
One thing I wish that I would have asked everybody, before we started this, was to mention, what they brewed on, like your very first brew setup, whether you stovetop brewed or whatever, because it took you, like you said, 10 years to get to where you are now. So I think that would have been really cool to know.
So there's my very first kettle right there. You can see it. I still have it. I now use it just to heat up PBW. So still useful.
My first brew setup, all grain brew setup, was 2 pickle buckets, the inner one with holes drilled in it for a false bottom, and a fish pump that I had to silicone shut because it fell apart under the high temperature, so I could
Nice.
recirculate, wrapped in bubble wrap. And damn if that thing didn't actually, produce good beer, is high efficiency for the day, 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think we all, kind of started there. I started with a beer kit, originally, and, kind of each year I would add something a little bit to it. I bought a brew kettle and igloo cooler and, those kind of things, and just kind of upgrade a little at a time, and probably, been at it for at least 5 or 6 years really to kind of get to what I'm doing now.
Cool. So I guess to move right along, I think our final one is Dale. We saved the best for last, Dale. So
Right.
looking forward to it.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, my first brews, I probably told others before, but my wife, she's 1982. She bought me a winemaking kit, had a carboy and a booklet basically. And at the very back of the booklet, I kept reading the wine thing. It's going to take like a year before you could drink it. So in the very back of the booklet was a recipe for beer, and it was ready in 3 weeks. And I've never made a drop of wine since. So that kind of got me going. And then I think I don't remember my dates, but I know I went to all grain pretty quickly, just mostly for cost advantage, and as well as just some flexibility on playing with ingredients and flavors. So anyway, so I kind of got 2 setups, and this is sort of the one I'm showing is what I use for when I'm going to make 5 to 10 gallons, and almost always I make 10. If you're going to go to the trouble to make 5, it's not much more to do 10. I use propane, got a good little burner. Never mess with electric. It just propane is just always there and easy. So I use a mash tun that's igloo cooler. It'll hold, I don't think I've ever brewed a big enough 10-gallon batch that it overflowed, but I've gotten it to the top. But normally it's about 2/3 full for a 10-gallon, 6% beer or whatever. I use a manifold that I kind of built and I kept modifying over the years. This is what I've been using for probably 10 years now. And those are all dry fitted on that right-hand photo. So it all comes apart, which is why I have a band around it to keep it together if I stir. And that's nice because I can rinse all the grain out of it. I used to have half that many slots, but I like to do wheat beers. And once in a while they would get stuck. So I added some more slots 4 or 5 years ago, and I've had hardly any problems since. I did some rye that I added rice hulls to, and again, I've just never had a problem. So that's my mash setup. For my bigger brewing projects, I use the converted keg like everybody starts out with, and I just kept it. I've always liked it. I know it. I know how it works as far as how quick it's going to boil and all that stuff. So I've got a little stainless mesh sleeve that goes over the drain valve at the bottom. And that's about as simple as it gets as far as brewing it. For 10 gallons, again, it'll take it pretty close to the top, depending on how long I want to do a boil. If it's 90-minute boil, sometimes I actually have to add a little bit of water to it just to get the final yield volume down. So next slide. So I don't have the hoses and stuff, but this is basically the sequence from keg to pump up into my chill plate. The chill plate I used immersion chillers for years, and the chill plate is just like that. That was like one moment in brewing that I wish I had done earlier forever. It just is so time saving for me. It does not work well gravity fed. That would have been my preference. So I've gone through a couple of pumps over the many years, but you have to pump it through. And it's also, you want to pump it to clean it too. I pump it both ways with cleaner sanitizer. So that's pretty standard. But then my fermenting is maybe a little different than others. And I figured out many years ago, after I broke my second or third carboy, like it just dawned on me I could ferment my corny kegs. And so my arm is just skinny enough I can get into it to really get a nylon pad to clean it and all that. So I pump cooled wort right in and aerate it. I've got a little aerator tube. And so for to gas it off during ferment, I do a couple ways. So I take a fitting and I push the poppet out. I've got a few of those. And I put a piece of hose over that, and then a rubber stopper. And then for initial ferment, depending on the style of yeast, of course, but for most of them, I do a plastic tube into a bucket for blow off. And then a few days later, I'll pull that and just put an airlock on top of that rubber stopper. So you can see in the upper right corner, that's kind of the 4 or 5 days in, that will go on. And that'll go on for my secondaries as well. And then I push from one keg to the other, from primary to secondary, and then possibly into a third, a tertiary, or a serving keg. So I just do a jumper from liquid side to liquid side. I'm all ball lock, or rather pen lock. And so it's easy for me to keep track of and all that. So, so that's kind of how I push it over. So as far as my current brewing, most of my brewing now, I'm slowing it down. I'm using, playing around a lot with graphs right now. I'm kind of enjoying where that's going. And then just small boils back to my kitchen induction top. It boils, I've got a 3-gallon kettle or so, and it boils down to 2.5 gallons. So if I'm making a graph, that's a 50-50 wort and apple juice. And I'm playing with some other things too. But from that point, it still goes into the kegs, just like you saw on the previous slide, that all the fermenting goes the same way. And it just really suits me well. I don't like cleaning glass and getting a brush down in there and trying to get every last bit. It just works really well. Also, another advantage is you can pump off the yeast instead of, I don't have a conical, of course, so I can push the yeast out of the bottom, the slurry, if I want to clean it or step it up again, or sometimes I'll just leave it in there and put a darker beer right on top of it, wort, and just do that 2 or 3 generations. I've had pretty good luck. Up to 3, 4 generations usually, things start to change. But so that's kind of my brewing process. Any questions?
Did you say that you use that jumper to like, so you have your fermentation keg and then you jump it to like a serving keg.
It depends
that
on
correct,
this.
or-
It depends on the style of beer and yeast or cider or whatever I'm making. If I feel like it has been in the primary quite some time, or I've crashed it, I can usually, I'll pump off like a half a quart, a pint or so, and it's got some slurry and some junky stuff in it, and then it clears right up. And I might just pump it straight into a serving keg at that point. So I try to flush the keg that's going to receive with a little CO2. Sometimes I forget. I honestly haven't noticed the difference either way, but I like to put CO2 in just so it's not going to be in contact with oxygen. And yeah, just, wet side to wet side and push with some CO2 and it works pretty good. I've even bottled that way, though that's a little bit more fiddly. You have to really have a low CO2 pressure and not too leaky of a racking keen or whatever, or a bottling keen. So.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious if you'd ever, or the possibility of serving from the keg you fermented in. Like if you cold crashed it, like your first few pints would be probably like a lot of trub and yeast. But if you've ever done it, I don't know. I don't know if it eventually would clear out, and so the same vessel you fermented in, you pour from. But
I mean, you could. So Frank, can you bump it back one?
Yeah, and to speak on that, there are a couple of people in the club that have chopped off about 3 or 4 inches of their dip tube inside their keg to do that, to leave everything behind. And they have, now I've caught them and they don't bring them to Brewfest, but there are a couple people that I know of that have chopped off their dip tube inside the keg to keep the stuff on the bottom.
You could do that. So what I do when I'm pushing from the right-hand picture, when I'm pushing from that keg into the secondary or serving keg, I'll elevate. I've got a little 1x2 piece of wood that I elevate under the edge that has the dip tube. And so a lot of the trub or yeast or whatever stays in the bottom because the keg is like on a 10-degree angle or something like that with that dip tube up higher. I have a couple of dip tubes that are maybe a ½ inch shorter, but nothing short enough that I think I'd want to trust serving it from that. That's an interesting idea. I have found when I don't do a secondary, and I still think I'm pushing clean beer into the serving keg from the primary, if I take it to Brew Club or something to serve out of, it's cloudy. I mean, I think you're still pushing enough over, even if you're careful from that first fermenter, that you're still going to have some stuff in the bottom until you pour a good third or half of the keg out, and it'll start to clear pretty good. But if it's going right into my kegerator, I mean, first glass or two can have some cloudiness, and after that, it's clean as a bell, clear as a bell.
I've got a question for you. How do you clean your plate chiller? What's your procedure?
So with that pump you see in the middle in between, so I initially will just simply run some hot water through the pump and the chiller. And then I have my keg cleaner, which is a sump pump that I can just set in my sink, in my brew sink out in the garage. And that's a much higher pressure than the pump would do. So I'll clean the pump with hot water, then I'll do just a quick blast through with, Star San or I use OxyClean and the stuff you're not supposed to use anymore. What is that stuff? Anyway,
Trisodium phosphate?
Yeah. So I use a 1/3, 2/3 mix on that. So I push that through.
90.
I push that through for a few moments on the pump. I don't want to push it through the pump. I don't know if that's good for it or not. Clean that up good. And then I'll push it all the way for 10 minutes through one direction on the plate chiller. And then I'll turn it around and push it the other direction through the plate chiller for 10 minutes. And then I pump hot water through it again and store it, drain it and store it.
Honestly, I've had a plate chiller for many years, and I abide by the Angelo method where it's still hot side. So The last 5 minutes of boiling is recirculating from the boil vessel back into the boil vessel through the pump and plate chiller. So it's a long enough period at close to boiling temperature that it sanitizes the plate chiller, as long as there's no bits in there, obviously, but like rinse out the bits immediately and then just recirculate boiling water through it for 5 minutes
So he never sanitizes, basically, he cleans it so it's clean, but he doesn't sanitize.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Oh.
it's gonna get, as long as
That's a
you
good idea. Yeah.
repasteurize it as you're boiling, it's not gonna change
That's a
anything.
great idea. Though I will say that I'm going to sanitize my pump and everything, though I suppose the same logic applies, but
Yeah.
so before I use it, I have a bucket of sanitizer and I'll just pump sanitizer through for a couple of minutes and go.
Some people also will put them in their oven because they're all metal, and you can heat them up that way to
I've heard that.
sanitize.
Yeah. heard that.
That's actually what I do with mine. So one thing though I've noticed is that I kind of wonder if I'm starting to get some scale in there because I feel like I'm losing some efficiency, some cooling efficiency. So I'm kind of curious if I don't know, maybe run some different products through there to remove scale and some buildup once in a while that it might not help. But yeah,
So-
I cook mine in the oven.
So one thing I want to hang on for you guys. One last thing I note is I've discovered a common denominator on length of time in my brew day. If I do not use a hose, my brew day is half the time. If I eliminate all hoses from my brew day, I do not, it's a fast day because I'm going to do it on the stove. I'm going to pour it. I'm not going to run it through a plate chiller. It's changed my life. I love it.
Actually, hot filling my fermenter, doing the no chill, that was pretty eye opening. It still made a great beer, and it was super fast. I mean, you cut out all that chill time. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. I might do it more often.
I'm glad to hear. I'd like to talk to you offline more about that because I had seen some things and listened to things online about putting in Australia. They put into jerry cans and they just red hot and they just set that in the fridge. So they can't afford the water. I'm like, well,
Just be careful, Dale, with yours, using your keg. It was out at X Bar Ranch. We did a brew day in Mayfest, and I think it was Henry had done it, hot filled a keg, and the warmth, the heat of the wall of the wort, like basically separated the handles from the keg.
Yeah,
the handles like melted off, not melted off, but like got the adhesive soft enough that the they separated the rubber.
So I
top
could
and bottom
see how
separated.
I could see how that might happen. Right now, what I'm doing is with a lot of grafts and things like that. I even brewed or made a date wine for half of one. So basically, I've got something cold in the keg to start with when I pour the hot on top, and then I top it off with cold again. So at least the way I'm doing it currently, I'm not filling an entire 5 gallons of boiling liquid.
I think it can help a little bit. You usually at the end of your boil, you've got a knockout time anyway. So if you depending on how much it cools, like if you get down to 180, I didn't have any problem with my keg, but I think that would be something you would want to be careful of. I guess give it a little bit more, settling time. Probably wouldn't hurt. I mean, you're gaining a lot by not chilling it and not cleaning chiller and pump and stuff. So I was surprised how well it worked. Of course, my fermenters are all stainless, so I actually liked going directly into the stainless fermenter better because there wasn't enough room in the keg to give me a full keg afterwards. Because the keg's 5 gallons and then you lose some with sediment and trub and everything. So going into the fermenter was a better scenario for me. But the only problem was I couldn't gravity feed into that tall fermenter, so I still had to have a pump, which at home is no big deal. But if I wanted to brew somewhere where I didn't have power, I couldn't. It would be a lot harder for me to fill the fermenter.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, with that, I think we'll get ready to move on to the tastings. I do want to say a special thank you to everybody that volunteered to do this, took the time to get your pictures, sent over and organized, and go through that. I think this was really cool. So thank you.
Cool.
All right, are you guys ready to drink some beer? I'm
you give us,
curious.
Can you give us 30 seconds to go get the beers?
Oh yes, go get the beer. Go get beer.
Which first?
So
Porter first?
porters and stouts is the same.
Porter first?
Yes, I'm starting with the Deschutes Black Butte Porter. And then I also picked up Free State Oatmeal Stout and Boulevard Dark Truth Imperial Stout. And that's the order I'm going to go. I guess you can do whatever you want, but we're going to be talking about the same beer, then,
I saw something online this morning and thought about this, and it was a quote. Somebody said, "All stouts are porters, not all porters are stouts." And I thought that was apropos for the day.
Yeah, so this presentation is recycled from the original date on it was like February 4th, 2017. So that right around the same time of year. But I did these presentations for friends when I was studying for the BJCP group. So like every other Sunday you come over and I give you beer, but you had to sit through my PowerPoint presentation. So I'm recycling that since this is my first tasting, but we'll try to do some other exciting stuff. So you'll notice I'll wait a little bit longer for people to get back, but my first slide about like how to taste beer is not really meant for you all. It's meant for my friends that aren't brewers, and I made come over and drink beer and watch my PowerPoint. And as we're going, feel free to leave any comments about the beer in the chat, and I'll try to catch up on those as we go. Be looking, I guess, specifically for aroma, appearance, flavor, mouthfeel. Those are, as I said, this was like my BJCP study PowerPoint. So those are the parts of the ballot when you're judging. Is it called a ballot? I don't, whatever. So, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and open my beer now. I've been talking and I haven't even done that part. So you'll want to start by smelling it. When you first pour the beer, you might get things in the nose. Is my webcam dirty? I don't know, probably. I don't want to mess with it because it might get worse. Yeah, this is the computer I always had out by the fire pit, and I've heard, no, I'm not gonna clip. Okay. Anyways. Yeah, when you first pour the beer, there might be aromas that will dissipate as the beer sets. And so get that good first sniff, and y'all know the relationship between what you smell and what you taste. So start off by smelling it. You can swirl it a little to get more aroma to release. And you'll notice if you smell it in the beginning too, and then after the beer's been setting for a while, you might get different aspects of the aroma. I had like a Neapolitan Imperial Stout last night, and it was like at first I just got strawberry, but let it warm up for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden I was getting a lot of chocolate and vanilla. So anyways, next you will hold up to light, look at the color clarity. All these beers are going to be pretty dark brown to black and opaque, off-white, pretty persistent fluffy head that I got with this one. Swirl it, smell it again, then you taste it, let it linger a little bit, swallow, exhale, note the aftertaste. I learned this from Jim McGovern, but that is your retropharyngeal sense. And you don't get that when you're drinking wine that's unique to beer. So fun fact for the day. It's also important, I mean, if you're really trying to get a good taste of the beer, especially if you're like in a judging situation, that the environment is odor free, doesn't smell like cigarette smoke or perfume. You don't use the hand sanitizer that smells like a fruit tree, or, you know, cut an onion and try to tell what the beer tastes like. Not going to work. And if you are tasting a lot of beers and you want a cheat sheet or to reset your palate, you can sniff the inside of your arm. Again, if you're not wearing perfume, sniff the inside of your arm, eat a cracker. That'll help you cleanse your palate. All right, we can move on. Thanks for putting up with that slide.
I want to say
only a couple people smelled their arms just now.
Yeah.
I want to jump in and say that I've never heard that. I've never done that. And I sniffed my arm and it like totally worked. Like when I went back and smelled the beer, it was way, way better. So thank you.
All right. I'm gonna
not a dumb slide for me. That was a great slide.
Excellent. Yeah, next time we all meet in person, I'm gonna look for you all be sniffing your arms.
Hey Lee, real quick pointer, like one of the things we both picked up at when we were studying for our BJCP, that we've got these silicone coasters that you can put over the top of your glass to trap a lot of those aromas if you're trying to really look for stuff that's there. And then you can open it and get a bigger hit.
Yes, that is true. So a little bit about the history of British stouts and porters. I mean, that's where the style initiated. We're talking 18th century England here. Really the first like roasted malt, black patent malt, didn't come around until like 1817. So they were using like some caramelized sugars and just various grains to do these. It became popular amongst like the common working man. Back in the day, porter was a term that were like street and river pavers. So like putting down the stones in the river after a hard day at work, they wanted a dark beer. So the beer ended up being called porters. And over time it evolved. And as John was saying earlier, the term stout was initially used to describe like a really dark porter. So they were kind of been interchangeable throughout history, and they are similar styles, which is why I think it's fun to kind of do the progression and drink them together. And as we've learned throughout multiple tasting seminars by Chris Bob, a lot of beer styles are based on taxation. And so increased taxation kind of brought about milder styles of porters. And then, yeah, when malt roasting became available in 1817, then you could have black patent malt for the first time. And that's where the term black patent malt comes from, is it was patented then, and it was the first like roasted malt to be patented. So next slide, of course.
Not only, before we move to the slide, not only does the beer style come from the porters going to their place where they would eat and drink, the porter house, the steak is also named for the porters. They would have the porter steak and the porter beer in the porter house after work. It was where they would sort of meet after work, the gathering place. So the porter house steak, because it was served in the beer where the porters went, or in the restaurant or the bar where the porters went to have their porter beer.
I did not know that. All right. So of course, you know, well, obviously all the styles start somewhere over in Europe and not in America. And then they come to America, and America is like, fuck yeah, let's increase those roasted grains. Let's double the hops in this. So basically any version that started off as a European style, if you put American in front of it, it just means it's more intense. Same with porters and stouts. So what are you all tasting in this beer? Let me know if you're drinking the Deschutes or if you've got something else. What aromas are you getting on the nose? kind of flavor, mouthfeel are you getting from it? Go ahead and chime in. I copied the style guide from BJCP on the slides. And I will say that this Black Butte, I picked it partially because it's good and available. And it's hard to find like just a standard porter that doesn't have a bunch of adjuncts in it nowadays. But this is listed in the BJCP style book as a classic example of the style. So another reason I picked this one. I filled out little score sheets earlier in the week. So let's see what we've got in the chat. Roasty for sure. Yeah, I got a little bit of like caramel note in the nose, maybe some minimal floral hops. It's pretty well balanced, but I think it finishes a little bit dry. There's definitely some malty sweetness in there, and I maybe like a little bit chocolatey, a little bit burnt, but I think, yeah, if I use one word, it would definitely be roasty. Yeah, Greg says coffee overtones. Other Greg says toffee. Yeah, dark chocolate charred. Totally. I'm getting all that too. Dark rye bread crust. Huh. I want rye bread now. Okay. Well, if you go to the next slide, it is more information about this specific beer. And since you all picked up the beer on your own, there's not like some big reveal at the end about what beer we're drinking. And I probably got this off their website years ago. So chocolate, coffee, creaminess, roasted finish. Yeah, I guess I forgot to talk about the mouthfeel, but creamy is a good descriptor of this one. If you are ready to move on to the oatmeal stout, Free State oatmeal stout is what I'm drinking. And I totally didn't realize this until I started putting my slides together. My bad. On Facebook in the forum, I was all like, we're drinking 20B American stout, and the stout I pick obviously has oatmeal in the name. So it is actually category 16B. And if you notice on this slide, there are so many variations of stouts, like, and they're not, I mean, there's certainly a difference between them, but it's not necessarily a pronounced difference. So some of it's self-explanatory, like the Irish stout is lower strength than the Irish extra stout. The extra stout, so back in the day, when they were exporting, beers would go bad, and that was like one of the things that encouraged higher alcohol content and more hops, is that helps the beer stay longer without spoiling. So whenever you're shipping it across the sea, has a better chance of not being disgusting when it reaches its destination. So in a lot of beer terminology, you'll see like extra, and that means it's got extra alcohol and hops. So there's the Irish extra and the foreign extra in there. Tropical stout was like in the Caribbean, like using more local ingredients, but the rendition of the foreign extra stout. Category 16 is dark British ales. So that's where you've got the sweet stout, the oatmeal stout, tropical stout, and the foreign extra stout. And then of course you get to America Fuck Yeah in category 20. A little bit more about oatmeal stout. Scroll down in my notes here. So I really like the body on this, and I will say, back to port, I don't know what styles, but Zipline has a really good oatmeal porter that's out on the market now. I've been thoroughly enjoying that one recently. If you haven't given it a try and it sounds up your alley, I would encourage it. But oats kind of have a little bit of bitter and astringency, but they also contribute a really silky mouthfeel, which I definitely get in this beer. So, I mean, throughout the history of brewing, oats have been used, and it used to be oatmeal before it was like just like flaked oats or oat malt. But but they'd kind of gone out of style, and then they came back in the 1890s as health food because oatmeal's obviously healthy. So you're not just like getting drunk, you're treating a condition. For an invalid was a term that was used. I found an ad from a newspaper in like 1894 that says oatmeal stout, most nourishing and strengthening, strongly recommended for invalids. See medical opinions. Brewed from oatmeal, malt, and hops only. So, you know, we're basically like having a healthy tonic right now. And yeah, the information about the BJCP category for the oatmeal stout is up right now. And certainly the silky velvety mouthfeel is part of the character. What all are you guys, is anyone drinking the Free State oatmeal stout right now? Have any comments for the tasting box? And while you comment on that, I mentioned earlier, so the first black patent malt, roasting different than kilning. So kilning is at a lower temperature, and you're laying it out flat when you are encouraging like modifications and conversion of starches into sugars that then the yeast can break down. So roasting, you're using grain most of the time that's already been converted and doing it in a like drum at higher temperatures. So then I think is the next slide like the Levibon stuff, Frank. There's a Levibon system, which is like color grading. So it is very similar to, you're all probably familiar, seen SRMs before, standard reference method, to talk about the color of beer. In America, we use SRMs to talk about the color of like the beer in the glass right here. And then Levibons to talk about the color of the malt. So Levibon scale is named after Joseph Levibon, who came up with the measurement of color in beer. And so just to give you an idea, in this slide that's got like the circular scale kind of talks about this. So like a pale golden lager would be like 2 or 3 degrees, and a pale ale like 10 to 13 degrees. A dark lager is like 17 to 20. But a black imperial stout can get to be like 70 degrees on the Levibon. We're talking about the finished beer. Some of the malt can get up to like 250, 300, even 400, which is pretty dark. And so in talking about the modification, sugar conversion and everything, and knowing that that is what the roasting process does, obviously, or intuitively maybe, there's a linear relationship between Levibon degrees and diastatic power, which is the conversion potential of your mash, like how much of that is sugar that's going to turn into alcohol when the yeast does its magic. So yeah, okay, I'm going back to the chat now to look at the comments that everyone has about this. Got creamy toffee, some astringency. Dale, which beer was that on? Was that the Free State oatmeal stout? I'm curious. Clint says toffee, smooth, silky mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Oh, John says, okay. I'm reading the comments now, and John says he got a little astringency too. Yeah, and that can come from a really roasty malt, or if you get some of like those husks stuck in your, sit in your keg for too long or something like that, that can all cause astringency. And astringency is kind of like the, I don't know, like, is puckering the right word, but that feeling in the back of your mouth, you're like, yeah.
Well, I only got it on the first sip. It's like, so I was thinking that was related to the fact that I just put down something that was really roasty and almost charred, and then hit it with something different. And I think it was an interaction between the two.
Yeah, and Frank mentioned the perceived bitterness in darker beers, and certainly I second guess myself all the time. I'm like, is that just like a high level of bitterness, or is that actually astringency? Like that's something I kind of struggle with in identifying which one it is, because there's certainly similar sensations.
Well, and it's the for the average person, like the BMC drinker that I would talk to about beers, they associate bitterness with beers, and then they associate more bitterness means bigger beer, and stouts and porters having that astringent bitterness, that perceived bitterness of dark malts, will just, oh, I can't do the big beer. I can't do those big dark beers or those big beers. And then I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, the dark ones, like the stouts and stuff. And I'm like, there are some stouts that are lower ABV than the IPA you're currently drinking, or because of that astringency and that sort of like heavy bitterness that's not balanced out with other things, alcohol or sweetness or whatever. It's, I don't know. It's one of those things that if you talk to a BMC drinker, they're like, oh, stouts is too much for me. I'm like, why? Why?
Certainly. I haven't heard the term BMC before, so every time you say it, I'm like, what? But no, that I like it. I might have to start using that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open my last beer, and then after we finish up the meeting, we can chit chat for a little bit and finish drinking these beers. I'm not actually drinking them this fast, but I'll finish them tonight. So we're getting into the Imperial Stout, Boulevard Dark Truth Ale. I feel like this has only been around for a few years. I don't know. I could be totally off on that, but I have enjoyed it when I've had it before, and I was trying to go for local breweries, and so many of the, especially Imperial Stouts you find on the shelves nowadays have, I know in my post I said like, no coffee or cocoa nibs or cake, but they're just like so adjuncted or at least barrel aged. And so I was going for something that's just a straight Imperial Stout. So Imperial Stout is interchangeable with Russian Imperial Stout. In BJCP, it's just Imperial Stout, but a lot of times in the commercial world, you see Russian Imperial Stout, and a lot of beers have like Russian themes. Like one of the examples in the BJCP guidelines is the Old Rasputin Ale from North Coast. And the reason that is because Russia has to do with the history of this beer. So Peter the Great opened Tsarist Russia to the west in the 18th century. And this was about the same time that England was getting into these new dark beers called porters. And so they shipped them over to Russia. And by the time they got to Russia, they weren't good anymore because they didn't have enough alcohol and didn't have enough hops. So they up the alcohol, they up the hops, and that's how we end up with a Russian Imperial Stout. So then it can make it to Russia and survive the trip and be good after there. Peter the Great had visited England and fell in love with these. But then I like this part of the history. So Catherine the Great, who also liked coffee, and apparently coffee was only for like men to drink during that time, but she drank really strong coffee. She really liked Russian Imperial Stouts. And at one point, she had commanded a brewery to make a beer that would keep for up to 7 years. And so I think I've maybe aged a beer 7 years before, not on purpose. And that doesn't work with a lot of styles, but a Russian Imperial Stout is one of those styles that if it's high enough ABV, you can age it for 7 years. So I just thought those were some fun historical facts about it. If anyone's drinking this one, let me know what you are smelling, seeing, tasting, feeling in your mouth. And we're back to the American Stouts and Porters category of BJCP guidelines now, 20C Imperial Stout. So yeah, this is just I have no idea if that 7 years is in the original fermenter. All the chats are coming in. Sorry, I'm trying to read them and catch up. We're talking about CO2 off-gassing can cause perceived astringency. Oh no, Matt couldn't find any dark truth. Oh, Clint says he's getting CO2 in this. Dale says slight fruit nose after it opens up after a few minutes. Have a nutty comment. I like this one. Okay, what were my, I drank this one last night. This one definitely, whenever I poured it, had the largest, most persistent head of these 3 beers. And it's even a darker colored head, more deep tan color. I had, yeah, sweet, chocolatey malt, caramelly, slight burnt flavor, a little bit raisiny and grainy as it warms up. And in the mouthfeel, I feel like this one's a little bit chewy, which I'm pretty sure is appropriate for style. It's in there somewhere. John says yes to fruits and nuts. Makes me think of a weak barley wine. Weak barley wine. I totally agree with that, John. Yeah. We got bitter chocolate, molasses. Yes, I agree with all that. Oh, it does say chewy in the mouthfeel. All right. Does anyone else like mouthfeel on this? What do you think about that? Is anyone else getting chewy, or how would you describe it? Yeah, that raisin stone fruit. I picking that up too, Dale. Viscous. Ooh, that's a good word, Matt. I like that one. Thick and chewy. Yes. I like drinking beer with you guys. Very rich mouthfeel. Yes, it is a little boozy. I would agree with that. Let me see, what is this? So this one's 9.7% alcohol and 60 IBUs. And then I think that the next slide is tasting notes on it, which I totally just pulled off of Boulevard's website. So it's some nice marketing material there. I enjoy the wording. Like, I think that would be a great job to write beer descriptions, especially the fun ones where they drop in song lyrics or whatever. But yeah, layers of complex flavors slowly emerge from the glass. Espresso, roasted fig, creme brulee. And it does say they use Belgian yeast in this one, which I might not be the style guideline, but don't tell on me. So that could be where we're getting a lot of those like stone fruit kind of flavors from, Dale. It would be the Belgian yeast. German hops. Yes, esters. Dry smoky finish. All right. Well, I have a couple more slides, but that's it for like the tasting information. I appreciate you all going out to get the beers so we could drink the same thing, and hopefully we can get back to in person because I've got some fun stuff planned. Speaking of which, so in May, last year we did fruit home brews. I don't know if you remember, I think it was, what was it? Strawberry and mango. And we had like 3 brewers for each of them. I thought that was a lot of fun. I like the creativity of it. Fruit like makes sense in the springtime. So we're going to do it again for the May tasting. So, and we're going to use the grain that was provided to donation from Free State. So if you sign up for this brew, we'll get you base malt of Pilsner and 2-row. Jake's putting that together. So we are looking for 4 to 6 people to brew. It can be a team. And that way we'll have 2 or 3 varieties of each of the fruits. Oh, fruits, cherry and peach. I was going for things that are pretty easily available frozen. So that's what I landed on. I know they're not really in season till the fall, but nothing is at this point in time. So anyways, cherry and peach are the options. And you can do any style you want, just utilize the fruit somehow. I haven't actually posted this on the forum yet, but I'll do it after the meetings. You can sign up on the forum, send me a message. Just let me know that you are interested and we'll get more details out. At this point in May, we're planning to be in person. So you can just bring a few growlers of it. But I I think over the last couple years, we've learned to be flexible and anything can happen. So be prepared. You might have to bottle it. Hopefully by May, we can at least be meeting outdoors. So yes, let me know. And then I think the final slide is just what else I have planned for tastings. I know next month, Jake and Josh are doing a seminar about water chemistry, and they brewed some beers to go along with that, which I think we're going to try to kind of combine seminar and tastings as much as possible, or when possible. And then April, we're gonna do Girl Scout cookie beer pairing, and I'm really excited about it. And then May will be the fruited homebrews. I have some ideas for the rest of the year. Haven't scheduled anything out yet, but I will work on doing that as Josh works on booking the seminar topics that we can, try to work together. I know there's been talk about doing like cider making seminars, so perhaps we could do homebrew ciders to go with that when we get it planned. Maybe like different hop family comparison. Jake and I were talking about this could be fun to do with dosing like Bud Light, or maybe Frank was the one that threw this out there. But
Yeah,
you've
Bud Light,
got
dosing Bud Light with hops. Yeah.
So some Pacific Northwest hops and some Southern Hemisphere hops and some German hops, and dose up the Bud Light and just really get a feel for how different those families are and what they all bring to the table. Sounds like we'll definitely do some German styles at some point. Perhaps from Casey Beer Company, perhaps from a trip to Germany. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But stay tuned, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Lee. That was a great tasting. Thank you, Josh, for a really good seminar. It was good to see everybody's system. I think a lot of, especially our new brewers, hadn't had the opportunity to see what some of us are brewing with. So that was good. That was awesome. And thanks everybody for joining.